Oh, okay. So
So,
you got a job with the local sheriffs
yep.
working cold cases. How big of a sheriff's department are we talking?
Oh gosh, how many? I don't know how many WDs we have, but we're in the 20s in terms of detectives.
Okay.
I think we've got a couple hundred deputies, but our county is enormous geographically wise, one of the biggest in the state.
Can you say where
Um,
or what
sorry?
department? Can you say what
Oh, El
department?
Paso County
Oh,
Sheriff's Office in
that's
Colorado.
in Colorado.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So our office is in downtown Colorado Springs. So Colorado Springs Police is our partner agency there. So they obviously have jurisdiction within the city, and then we have the whole rest of the county, which is massive. So there's times like if we get a call that's way out in the east part of the county, we could drive for over an hour and
Oh,
still be in the county.
wow. Oh,
Yeah.
that's
So
spread out. Yeah.
it's a huge area. Yeah.
You ever work with Joe Kenda?
No, I have not. I have run into him once at a bar, but I did not work with him.
I interviewed him. What a nice
Oh,
guy.
did you really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't say enough good things about him. Yeah, just to illustrate what a nice guy he is. My wife is like a huge fan. He had Homicide Hunter on A&E, etc. And I'm like, you know what, Joe? My wife is like your biggest fan. Could you call her? When she's at work, she can't take phone calls. Leave a message. She'll get the biggest kick out of that. So he calls.
Yes.
He said, "This is Joe Kenda, Ruth.
Yeah, his
Coming
voice
for
is so
you."
distinctive.
I'm
Oh,
like,
that's awesome. That's
what
awesome.
a cool dude. And I'm like,
Yeah.
absolutely. So,
Yeah.
so why the interest in cold cases? What do you find so fascinating about this?
I like them because there's a certain methodology and like you, it's not everything's a big rush, like with a brand new homicide,
Right?
where you're just like go, 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 and get everything. I like it because you can take your time, you can really put your investigative strategy together, um, and you can adjust, if you don't find something you need to or whatever, like there's ways to adjust. And it's also a challenge because I think it forces you to not only think outside the box, but kind of think outside the box that the box is in sometimes.
Sure.
Um, and I also think my counterintelligence training comes into play hugely and is directly relevant because the counterintelligence, when you're talking about finding a human that you want to recruit to provide you information, is extremely long process usually. And they taught us from day one, like you're not even going to be the one probably to recruit that source. You may just play one small role in this
Mm,
whole long process. And I sort of look at a cold case in the same way, not that I play a small role because I'm the subject matter expert on the case, but the fact that I'm very patient and I'm okay with not getting a result tomorrow. And I know it may take years, to get to where we need to be, but I'm okay with that. And so I like that part about it. And I like just being able to dive into a case and learn everything about it. And like I said, be the subject matter expert on it. And I got about 3 or 4 cases that are my main focus right now, and that's about right. I think if you try to add any more to the mix, then it starts getting jumbled in your brain.
now, is
Um,
that a full-time job?
I'm like 3/5 time in theory.
Okay. What is that?
I'm supposed to work 3 8-hour days a week. Sometimes I end up working a little more or on my
Okay.
day off or whatever, because this is something else I learned from counterintelligence. So I never ignore a phone call if I can help it.
Hmm.
Because a person might only be willing to talk to you that one time,
True.
right? And then they may
Very
change their
true.
mind. So if you don't,
Yep.
I'm always just like answer the phone or call them back right away. It's the same thing with counterintelligence. Like you might only get a source to talk to you one time, so you got to try to get everything out of them you possibly can and work on their time frame. So I always tell people like you call me any time of day, I'll talk to you because I want them to be comfortable. So um, anyways, yeah. So I do have a detective partner that I work with, and I can do almost everything the detectives can do. I just don't have arrest powers, and I can't like put my right hand up in front of a judge and swear on a search warrant or something like that.
Okay.
But I've written plenty of search warrants for my partner, and she goes and gets them signed.
Okay.
And then she can make the arrests. So
Right.
other than that, but I can interview people and go do whatever. So um, that's what I do, and I love it.
Speaking of cold cases, I was listening to your interview with Vic, and you brushed upon the Stephen Avery case. Since I'm in Wisconsin,
Oh
That was
yeah.
kind of a big deal. Yeah, what was your take on that?
He did it.
Yeah, me too.
Um, I wrote it. Yeah, you can Google my name and his name. I wrote like I think it was a 3-part article through the university on that case. I did a deep dive because I watched that documentary on Netflix and I was like, what? He was set up, like everybody thinks because it's so one-sided.
Yes.
So I was like determined to prove on some level that he did not commit that murder, and instead I ended up proving to myself that he did. Um, but I also appreciate about that myself that I can remain open-minded and go where the evidence leads.
I
But
was just gonna say, follow the evidence. You got to have a
yeah,
clear mind and don't go in with
yeah,
any preconceived notions,
yeah, exactly. So
which is hard to do.
I it's been many years, since I dove into that case, so I can't
Yeah,
remember all the details of it
sure,
now, but
sure.
at the end I concluded no, I think he probably did it.
I
So
think you're 100% correct. But let's
I'm
talk
not saying the
about,
cops were all on the up and up. I do think there was some shadiness going on, but I
yeah,
don't
there
think
could have been. I mean,
they didn't go to all that trouble to purposely set him up for a murder. So
no, no. Now, Rebecca Gould, her case.
yes,
You want to talk a little bit about that?
sure. Well, Rebecca, she was a college student who was murdered in 2004 in her boyfriend's home, and then her body, excuse me, her body was removed from the scene and disposed of off an embankment about 7 or 8 miles away on a county highway. And the reason I got into that case was also through the university. My content editor, she and I always go back and forth about different cases that are in the
Mhm.
news and new podcasts. And so in 2019, 2018, yeah, 2018, I guess it was, she goes, hey, have you heard of this Hell and Gone podcast? I'm like, no. And she goes, you should really listen to that case. I think you'd be interested in writing about it. So I listened to it, and of course I was. She was correct. And I reached out to a journalist, George Jared, who was featured on that podcast, and he had actually been a Cub journalist in '04 and was on scene when Rebecca's body was found. So
Wow.
you can imagine how the case stayed with him through all these years.
Right.
And he'd written many articles about it. He now has several true crime books, and he always has a chapter about her case in each of his books. And I was like, yeah, I really want to write about this case from a criminal profiling perspective because it was clear the cops were not putting any weight on the fact that someone tried to clean the scene and they moved her body. Like those are not common actions that are taken by a killer. So I thought they were really revealing. And I also was like, that strongly indicates a known connection between
Right.
Rebecca and her killer. Well, the main detective on the case had this false theory of some local drug dealer that had killed her over like a $50 marijuana debt or something stupid like that. I'm like,
Okay.
drug deal. There's none of this indicates drug dealer or drug deal gone wrong or anything like that to
Yeah.
me. So I contacted this guy George, and I'm like, hopefully he'll talk to me so I can get a little more insight. But if not, maybe I'll just let it go. So I wrote him an email and he called me like 15 minutes later. And we talked for 3 hours and 22 minutes on our
Oh,
first phone
wow.
call.
Okay.
So we were like joined at the hip on this case from day one. And I actually went out to Arkansas shortly after that. I was like, I just need to be on the ground. I want to see where she was killed. I
Yeah.
want to see these routes between the house and where she was found and what's the atmosphere of this town. And so my husband is like, got voluntold, I guess. No, he volunteered to go, but we drove out and did all this research on the ground. And George was there and he introduced me to Rebecca's father. And then the three of us were kind of attached at the hip, like, we have got to get something going in this case. Like, this is totally solvable.
Yeah.
And someone trying to clean the scene and all this stuff, how is there no like foreign DNA? So anyways, her father and I actually made a complaint to the FBI about this state police detective. And we also went to the lieutenant governor and had a meeting with him about the handling of the case. And eventually, I don't know if it was because of us, but eventually in early 2020, they reassigned the case to a different detective who ended up having it solved about 10 months later. But during that time, George and I were just kind of hammering through the media, and we created a Facebook group
Yeah.
so we could control not control, but like post what we wanted to post about the case, because there were other groups for her case, but they all moderated comments and like wouldn't always approve our posts. And
Mm.
so anyways, we created our own page and it's still out there. It's called Unsolved Murder of Rebecca Gould. And we'll never delete it. Like And we don't moderate unless someone gets super nasty and like is engaging in personal attacks or something. We might moderate or delete their comments. Other than that, we don't delete comments. We don't believe in that. So in late 2019, after we formed the group, this guy named William Miller joined, and one of our group members who was really just for whatever reason invested in the case and helping us, she goes, "Hey, by the way, that's Rebecca's boyfriend's."
Oh
So
boy.
Rebecca's boyfriend is named Casey, and that's whose house she was killed in. She says, "Hey, that's Casey's first cousin." I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting that he joined the group under his real name." And we always figured it had to be Casey or someone in his family that did this.
Okay.
Okay, whatever. So we keep our eye. We figure, oh, well, this cousin probably doesn't think, or he probably thinks we don't know who he is. So he can just spy on the group for the rest of the family.
So let him, yeah.
Yeah. So then he starts like making comments on posts. Okay. Then he starts messaging me directly. So we're engaging in this conversation like all through 2020
Like what was
through
he what
private
would he say to
messages.
you?
Well, the first thing he sent me was a newspaper article that talked about a neighbor hearing screams the weekend of the murder. And he's like, "Hey, I was just trying to help. Wondering if you've seen this article and if you've talked to the neighbors." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I have that article." And I wasn't gonna tell him who I had talked to or not because I always
Right.
protect people's confidentiality. But like I forget exactly what I said, but hey there, thanks for reaching out. I appreciate you sharing this. Yeah, I have seen this. I am curious, what the neighbors know. And I kind of just kept it vague. And so he would just message me periodically with stuff like that. And like, "I think we can figure this out. And I know you can get justice for Rebecca. And I just feel so bad for her dad." And come to find out, and let me preface this, we did not think William Miller needed to be on the suspect list because we researched him and he had been living in Texas at the time of the murder with a wife and small child. And we had no idea that he'd been in the state of Arkansas the weekend of the murder.
Mm,
About 6 weeks before his arrest, we got the tip that changed everything for us, which was that he had been in the state, or been in the local area. And then him and his mom and brother fled the state the day after Rebecca was murdered. So we're
yeah.
like, what? What in the
Yeah.
world? We
That's a
never heard this
clue. Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And what's really disheartening is that all of that information had been in police's case file from almost day one. And they didn't think it was weird.
Wow.
And he'd only been interviewed one time in the very beginning, and they never went back to re-interview him again, until this new detective got put on the case. And so then he did, this is something with cold cases, you got to go re-interview everybody
Right.
and make sure you didn't miss anybody. And so he went out to Oregon where William Miller and his mom and brother were living in 2020 and interviewed him, and William confessed
He
to
did.
Rebecca's
He
murder.
confessed, huh?
It's all on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, which is under Jen Bucholtz PI.
Okay.
If you want to waste 11 hours of your time, you can watch the entire interview and interrogation. It's actually very instructive. The detective is a master interviewer, I think. He just the way he's groomed and the clothing he chose
Mm.
and the way he's sitting. I mean, it's really instructive if you want to learn more about good interview techniques. But yeah, so he got William to confess. And in addition to confessing to Rebecca's murder, he confessed to 5 others.
Holy shit.
Yeah. But the issue with those is he claimed they were all sex workers, so he didn't know their names.
Mm.
He gave some details about locations, and a little detail about a couple of the crimes. And he was asked, so I don't know how far into this part you want to get, but anyways, they said, "Well, have all their bodies been found?" And he goes, "Yeah, I think they've all been found," which tells me he must know what their names are if he's following them in the media.
Yeah,
So I don't
absolutely.
know what to believe with this guy.
Or he's just
But
making it up.
or
Yeah.
so state police never pursued those other 5
Mm.
potential murders. They didn't do anything about those confessions. I guess they just decided they were false or something. I don't know. They have no evidence to make that decision. But um, the more we've learned about William Miller since his arrest, with people coming out of the woodwork, contacting me and George, the more we believe he probably does have other victims.
Okay.
So we do have this like crowdsourcing project, long-term project going on to try to identify other potential victims. So, and then I'm sure, I don't know if people were curious, but I did reestablish contact with William once he was convicted of Rebecca's murder. He did get 40 years,
Only
eligible
40?
for parole at 30.
Wow. Okay. How old was he when he got arrested? About.
45.
So he'll be an old man when he gets out of prison.
He should be in his 80s
Yeah.
if he lives that long.
If he
Yeah.
does the whole stretch. Yeah.
Right. Um,
Interesting. But
so
you
I
still
reestablished
yeah, you still
contact.
communicate with him, right?
Mhm. I do. I truly want to learn from him. I mean, that sounds cheesy, but I was like, I don't know anybody else in that position who's willing to talk to me. So I'm interested in trying to get in his brain and figure out what led to him committing this murder and maybe others. And then maybe someday he'll talk to me. You know, I mean, I've asked him about his other confessions, and right now he's saying he made it all up. But I don't necessarily accept that.
Right.
But
Now,
I'm hoping maybe someday he'll come clean if there are
what do you
others,
think his motivation is, talking to you? Obviously for you, you're learning more about, the criminal mind, and
Mhm.
hopefully, if he has killed other people, maybe you could spark something where, that
Yeah.
would lead to, finding a body or, putting the case together or whatever. What do you think? Why would he want to do that with you?
Because I'm a female and nobody visits him. So
Oh, okay.
I'm guessing that's the main reason. Because every time I go to Arkansas, I go to the prison and we do a visit, you know. And I mean, his brother's been to visit him once with me. We went together.
Yeah.
And he had a cousin go one time, and that's it. He doesn't have any family in Arkansas. Nobody, well, I shouldn't say that. Casey and his whole family live in Arkansas, but none of them go visit their
Wow.
cousin. But anyways,
Now, did you ever have any contact with the first detective that kind of botched the case?
I tried. I had one conversation with him, and he was extremely egotistical and wanted to lecture me or go on and on about him being a Marine and how he's been to Iraq. And I'm thinking, yeah, I've done all the same stuff, but okay. And that's like irrelevant to what we're talking about here. But
Right.
yeah, he
I
was
have.
so abrasive and just, it's like talking to a brick wall. It
Oh, that's
was,
unfortunate because,
yeah,
I've worked with homicide detectives and been in investigations for homicides, and some of the guys that I worked with were just beyond rock stars.
yeah.
I was lucky enough to work with the two detectives on the Dahmer case
Oh,
that,
wow, really?
yeah, that were locked up with this guy for like 16 hours in a more or less a
Jeez.
broom closet. And I mean, they were so good. They're both in the homicide unit. And if I brought somebody in when I was a rookie, I would just listen by the door. And I'm just like, I never thought of that.
Yeah,
Wow, these
yeah.
guys are just so good. But then I also saw the flip side of the coin
Hmm.
where I'm like, you couldn't investigate your way out of a paper bag.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like I had detectives that it's like, you can't interrogate a prisoner who's intoxicated or high or whatever because you'll get ripped apart on the defense stand. So
Hmm.
sometimes they have to percolate and come down from whatever they're on for 24 hours. And you'll have a detective that's just plain lazy. They'll go to them in the cell and say, you want to make a statement? That's how they start out. Or do you want to talk to me? And the guy's like,
Of course not.
no. Yeah,
Yeah,
why would I want to talk to you? It's like,
exactly.
okay,
Yeah.
all
Yeah,
right,
you
he
got to put a
lawyered
little
up.
effort into it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, he lawyered up. Well, on to the next donut. And I'm just like, you are a waste of oxygen. You should not be doing
Yeah.
this job. But that's
Yeah.
what happens when you have bosses that become complacent and
Yep.
the environment becomes such a good old boys club or
Yep.
good old girls club or whatever, where, it's like, well, we're professionals here, that rank doesn't really mean anything. Bullshit. Yes, it
Yeah.
does. I'm your
Yeah.
boss.
Yeah.
And being a boss means it's like, okay, you know what? Pat is not pulling his weight. Pat is not, getting any confessions from anybody in the last 6 months. That's a red
Hmm.
flag.
Yeah.
It's just, oh, I could go on and on. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
It
I
was so
just,
frustrating. This guy had no oversight for 14 years. He held this case to himself, didn't share it with anybody. How is that allowed? How is that like that? I would never be allowed to do that at work. Like we have a meeting every other week where we have to give updates on what we're doing on each case. Like
Well,
It's maddening. And
well,
meanwhile, they let this guy walk free and potentially kill five more women when he should have been caught in the beginning, you
yeah, he
know?
should have been locked up. But
Yeah.
I will say, law enforcement can be very territorial. Like
Oh yeah.
certain, state, federal, local.
I know.
Nobody wants to talk to each other.
It's a
Nobody wants to
challenge.
give up their big secrets. And it's
Yeah,
like we're on the same team here, guys. We're trying to
exactly. Don't we
accomplish the
all
same thing here. But boy, I remember I was at a homicide, and it was just me and another copper that responded to this homicide. We have a description of the dude that killed dude in the bar, blah, blah, blah. Then the next day, somebody else is dead. And it's like, oh, well, dude's brother was there and he was wearing very distinctive clothing. And I said,
Mhm.
hey, he lives. And now he's an exact match for witnesses of, killing dude, the other dude. It was retaliation.
Okay.
And we go to the homicide detectives, and it's like, hey, he lives at 1234 West Lloyd Street. This is what he looks like. Here's all of his information. Here's his rap sheet. Here's blah blah. And they're like, oh yeah, that's nice. So
Jeez.
then,
Look, I'm
honest to
giving it to you
God,
on a platter.
here I am talking about God, but this is the God's honest truth. They're just like half an hour later, one of them goes to his lieutenant. It's like, hey, we're gonna slide over to this address. We got a lead on it. Yeah,
A
that I
lead.
spoon
Okay.
fed you. So they go down there. He's wearing the same clothes from the day before.
Oh my
I
gosh.
mean, it couldn't be more obvious. And he admitted
Yeah.
to it immediately. He says, "Yeah, I killed that fucker."
Wow.
Like,
Okay.
okay. And do you think Pat or Aaron got any kind of kudos?
No,
Hell no.
of
These
course not.
detectives are amazing. Holy shit. It's like so.
Out of thin air, they got all this information.
Yes. So you could get butthurt, but at the end of the day, hey, we locked up another killer. So
Just got them. Yeah, exactly.
and I
Exactly.
made some overtime off of it. So
Yeah.
it's a wash. And next week
Yeah.
there'll be another dead body. There'll be another
Yep.
homicide. It's like, yeah,
Absolutely.
whatever. Oh, so do you have any issues with testifying in court because you're a civilian? Has that ever come up?
No, I get subpoenas all the time at work, so no, it's not a problem.
Okay, so you don't have
Um,
defense attorneys saying, "Well, you're not really a cop, Jen," blah blah
no,
blah, to try and discredit you.
I mean they could try, I guess, but it's like I'm in a position. I'm not a sworn employee, like and my background
Yeah,
speaks
you're
for itself in terms of my
right. I
experience.
mean,
So
like I said earlier, your pedigree is, second to none.
yeah.
So but I could see, and again, with defense attorneys, you got a couple of different kinds. You got one that is super shrewd. They're kind of like Columbo from the old
Mhm.
TV show. Is like, one more thing, blah, blah, blah. Because I've been
Yeah,
roasted on the stand by them. Like, if I'm
yeah.
ever in trouble, I want you in my corner. That's the way I would think. And then you had the ones that were trying to be theatrical, waving their arms around and
Oh
doing
yeah,
silly stuff. And you're like, why are you doing that? You're making yourself look stupid. You're
yeah.
discrediting yourself. Oh
I've been
God.
lucky so far. I haven't had to testify.
Oh, you haven't
Um,
had to?
Not yet. I mean, I have several pending
Oh,
subpoenas,
okay.
a couple for homicide cases now,
Yeah.
but so far I haven't had to. The day will come, but it's not a problem. Like my predecessor, he had to testify on several different things, so
Okay.
it's not, I'm not worried about that.
Now, I guess it
And
depends on the culture of your department. I mean, some departments, I know mine, would completely turn their noses up to a civilian being an investigator. What's
Mhm.
it like where you're at?
I was scared of that when I first started. I was like, I feel like I'm going to be an outsider,
Yeah,
I'm treated as an equal, and actually it's turned out to be the exact opposite. So
good.
it's a really great atmosphere where I work. Like everyone's very team oriented, and um I really do try. I also try to just take some of the burden off our detectives too. Like if they need a bunch of jail calls listened to, I'm like, give it to me. I'll do that for
Mhm.
you. Or if they need like for important interviews, they get transcriptions, but then you have to listen again and make sure the transcription's correct.
Uh,
I'm like, give me that to do. I try to take some of that administrative stuff from them to free them up to do the more important stuff. So I think they appreciate that, but yeah, everybody works really well as a team as far as I'm concerned. So it's been a really good environment to work in. But I get it. Probably not all agencies would be like that.
no, I know that for sure. Just with where I worked, everybody was sworn, including dispatchers. So
Hmm.
it took a while, and then slowly that became civilianized. And part of the issue was it's like, well, now you're taking jobs away from cops when you're giving them to
Except we're always
civilians.
shorthanded. So
Yeah, I know, and we're always shorthanded,
yeah,
but when you're looking at it through that lens, it's like, well, that's a promotion that somebody could have had.
it's not like that for us.
Okay.
We don't take the place of a detective slot. Like we still have the
Mm,
same amount of detective slots.
gotcha. Gotcha.
They just
Because,
how they just added for civilians about 4 or 5 years ago, I guess it was now.
gotcha.
So we're an additional, we're not taking anybody's place. And of course, the qualifications are different, right? So I can't, I don't know. I guess it wouldn't be legally, but I don't think they could put me in a detective slot because I can't do quite everything a detective can do,
Right. Pretty
all those
much
powers,
everything, but not
but pretty
everything.
close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, pretty darn close. And your department's not the only one. I get to,
No.
like I said, I get to interview people from all over the country and all over the world, actually.
Yeah.
And that is becoming more and more prevalent because the numbers are dwindling for
Yeah.
law enforcement. So
People
you
don't want
got
to
to
join.
augment it somehow.
Exactly. And a lot of the civilian investigators now are retired detectives
Right.
anyways. So they've
It
got all the experience you need them to
exactly.
have.
Yes.
What's the problem,
They're
And
retired
we're
law
so much
enforcement.
cheaper,
Yeah.
you don't have to send us through the academy,
Yep. You don't have to pay him, and for them, you don't have to pay him benefits because
correct.
they already
Yeah.
have health insurance through their
Yeah.
pension and,
Exactly. Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
that's pretty big. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about the Debbie Sue Williamson case.
Sure.
Tell us about that.
Deborah Sue Williamson was murdered in 1975 in the carport of her home in Lubbock, Texas. She was stabbed to death. She was stabbed 17 times, and then her body was dragged about 25 feet and posed, I guess you could say, placed at the step to the back door of her home. And this is the second case George and I teamed up on to work on, and it's kind of where we started forming a little more of an official cold case team, like a volunteer type team
Hmm.
thing. And so we've traveled to Lubbock twice, and I think we had really good momentum going on the case. We conducted tons of interviews in person. We go knock on people's doors. The house where Debbie was killed is still there, and like nothing's been changed. And we met the current resident, and he let us in, and he let us take video. He let us come at
Yeah.
night so we could see what the conditions were like when she was killed, and all this stuff. So we did crime scene reconstruction, and we got found a knife expert to weigh in on her injuries and all this stuff, and put together. We don't do this to do a podcast, but we did put together a podcast for university called Break the Case, and season two's on Debbie's case, and we had really good momentum.
Yeah.
Then one of her family members went off the rails on us, so it
Oh,
all literally got derailed. So we felt we did as much as we could on that case. We gave Lubbock police, who were cooperating with us before this incident, we gave them everything we collected,
yeah.
all our interview recordings. I gave them everything. So they've got all that, but they've just done nothing on it. And we still have a pretty big following on we have a Facebook group for
Yeah.
Debbie. Unfortunately, I don't really have updates to post about her case, but if
Do
there
you have
is anything,
suspects in the case?
oh yeah, two top, yeah. Well, there's one top suspect, and then his best friend would be number two. And
Okay.
weirdly, those are the two that won't talk to us or have lied through their teeth to us.
Yeah,
So
that's strange. But stabbed 17 times, that tells me that somebody's very angry.
yeah, yes,
That's personal.
yeah, we totally believe so. And here's an advantage of what me and George do on the side is, I can go knock on anybody's door I want. I've talked to this top suspect on the phone. I called him at work,
Yeah.
did that on purpose. But I don't have to Mirandize anybody, right?
Yeah,
So I
that's
can
right.
record,
Yep.
and I'm in a one-party recording state. So I can record all these phone calls and conversations and then give them to police, and they can compare what the people say to us versus what they've said to law enforcement, and they can use that to their advantage. So, I mean, that's a huge advantage we have as civilians. Now, I can't do that to the sheriff's office,
Right.
but I can do that through my own work on the side. So,
Now you have a company called breakthecase.org,
mhm.
correct?
is a nonprofit. We really created it, George and I, we wanted a website, right? We wanted a landing site for all the casework we've done. Well, if you have a website, you need a name. So we're like, we tossed around names for a long time. And then we're like, well, I looked up Break the Case. I was like, well, there's no nonprofit called that. And the web domain is available, breakthecase.org. And it's never been trademarked. So we're kind of known through that name because of the podcast. Why don't we just stick with that? So that's what we ended up doing.
Okay.
And we didn't, I mean, we'll take donations and you can donate to specific cases because we like to empower donors, but we didn't create it to solicit donations. We basically created it to make ourselves more official and to have that website. So like when we talk to victims' families or law enforcement, they can just go there and see what we do and what we offer.
Okay.
So
So
yeah, we did that a
how
little
many
over a year
cases are
ago.
you working right now through Break the Case?
So right now we're just a small team. There's about 4 main investigators that we work together. We usually just take one case at a time.
Mm.
I have a dream of adding more teams across the country
Yeah.
so we can tackle more cases, but I found there are very few people out there who are willing to stick with it. They watch a show or a Dateline or whatever, and it's solved in an hour. And like, as you know, and as I don't mind, but cold cases take a long time.
Sure.
And they're tedious, and it's not all just the sexy knocking on the door, talking to suspect stuff, you know? And so most people who have wanted to volunteer with us, they'll get started on a task and then they just kind of peter out. So I don't know if the multiple team thing will ever happen. But if anybody out there is interested, certainly reach out to me. There's no like set requirement or background you need to have. In fact, I think it's almost better to have several people who don't have an investigative background, because we all think differently. And if you come
Sure.
from a different background, you're going to look at something differently than I am and come up with a different idea. So I like that.
Interesting.
George and I do most of the interviewing though, because he's a journalist. So we're both used to interviewing and talking to people all the time. So
Yeah.
we do a lot of the interviewing. But right now we're just working, there's the case we're working on now that's our main focus is that of Linda Malcolm. And we've been working on it for 3 years. So
Wow.
there's no set time frame for we just tell the victim's family we'll do everything in our power. We can't promise an arrest, but we will use every resource we can possibly come up with to at least get you some answers about your loved one's case and hopefully persuade police, you know, to go back and do what they need to do in order to get justice.
Yeah. It must feel so good to actually, be, solve a case or be a big part or even a little part of solving a case.
It is, and you feel like I'm trying to think of even the right wording because it's hard, but you feel like at least you brought a family some answers. The word
Sure.
closure just doesn't exist in
It
my
doesn't work.
vocabulary.
Yeah, there
No.
is no such thing as closure for that.
Resolution, maybe. I don't even love that word, but
Well, maybe a little bit of sense of justice. It's
yeah,
like, okay, and
yeah,
so this person doesn't go out and reoffend.
exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, that,
That's a public safety issue.
yeah, yes, it
No
is a
doubt.
very large public safety
Yes.
issue. Yes, absolutely. So what's your criteria for taking a case?
It's pretty loose. We don't take cases that have been ruled a suicide or accident. I mean, we're up against enough hurdles. I'm not going to try to fight to get a manner of death changed.
Sure.
But so we only take cases that we know are a homicide. We prefer cases that haven't had a deep dive into them before by another podcast or media outlet.
Yeah.
Um, Linda's case, when we were considering hers, I was like, oh my gosh, there's like no coverage of anything. Like nobody's done anything. It's like since 2012 or whatever, it was the last newspaper article. The family's got to be willing to work with us. We cannot have this situation again that happened in Debbie's case where family members in the media telling lies about us and I have to hire a lawyer. I mean, I spent thousands of dollars fighting this
Uh,
after we spent hundreds of hours and thousands of our own dollars working on
yeah.
the case for her. Can't have that again. So the
Right.
family's got to be willing to sign this memorandum of understanding with us. It's nothing, crazy, but it's just basically like you're not going to badmouth us in the media. And if you have an issue with us, you're going to talk to us, but you're also not going to dictate the investigation. You have to let us do what we do. And you're also not privy to everything we collect. So
Sure.
they have to be willing to accept those terms.
Mm.
And The other thing is the one document we got to have is the autopsy report. I have to have that. I have to
Makes
understand what
sense.
happened
Yeah.
to the victim in order to work the case. And we haven't had too much trouble getting those. Like if a family member doesn't have it, we helped Linda's family get it. The police chief was super upset that the coroner released it, but he's like, it's been 15 years. They
Right,
deserve
exactly.
it. So thankfully that coroner was on our side and he gave us not only the report, but he gave me all of their photos. So that was super helpful for
Yeah,
me and George to have those. Of course, I would never show those to the family, but
right.
so that's basically it. And then it's just literally a case by case basis. We'll do research and, see if we think it's something we can get some forward progress on. I mean, there's certain things we're just not going to be able to help with. Like we've had several drive-by shootings submitted, someone who was run over on an interstate in the middle of the night. I'm like, I can't do anything with that. Like
Sure.
there's gotta, unfortunately, like I ache for you, but from a civilian standpoint, we don't handle hard evidence. That's not something we want to do. That's the agency's thing. What else am I going to do with a drive-by shooting? Like
Yeah.
so we usually look for cases where the killer has gone above and beyond what they need to do. So like in Linda's case, she was stabbed 24 times and their house was set on fire.
Oh my
So I
God.
got things to work with there, right? Where I don't
Right.
need this case file. And we were able to get the arson investigation documents for that one.
Oh,
And we have
that's
an
cool.
arson investigator on our team. So that
Yeah,
was like super valuable.
absolutely.
So, and again, like Debbie's case, she was stabbed and then her body was moved and posed, so there's these behavioral things that we can work with. And I have enough to where I can do some crime scene reconstruction and stuff
Mm,
like that. So, um,
gotcha.
I guess that's it.
Okay. Do you still have the podcast?
We do.
What's it called?
We've kind of been in hiatus because there's nothing new to put out on Linda's case at this
Okay.
time. So I've been doing this, going on other podcasts to
Yeah,
talk about her case and just keep it in the media and keep it relevant. Help
absolutely.
police that are listening. And we will do a season 4 whenever we take on our next case, but we're not really entirely sure when that's going to happen. But
Okay.
we are taking case submissions. We always do. And I keep a spreadsheet whenever I get emails with case submissions. And I keep a spreadsheet with every single case. And so when we're ready to start a new one, I'll go back to that list and we'll evaluate them, see, rank them kind of which ones we think we can help with.
Gotcha. Now, forensic and investigative science, it's never been better, I don't think. Why are clearance rates not keeping up with the science? What's
That's a
your
good
theory?
question. Well, it's a multitude of things, of course. I know my current position with the sheriff's office, part of our problem is, I hate to say this, but it's the district attorney's office. It's like,
Oh,
if it's not on video with a confession,
right.
they don't want to take it, even though there's a ton of good circumstantial evidence. So we have a couple cases like that right now that are just languishing because they don't think it's a slam dunk. And it's very frustrating because it's like, well, why do we have a jury system? Like if everything's a slam dunk, there's no reason to have a jury system, right? So put your best case together and present to a jury, and if it's strong enough, but it seems like it's more about numbers and winning on their side. And I imagine that goes on in a lot of
Well,
agencies.
what I saw morph was DAs looking at cases where it's like, well, is there any Ring doorbell or CCTV with this? No, and they're
Yeah,
like, I don't want any part of it. Even
I
though we
know.
have this mountain of other evidence,
Yeah,
we
like
didn't always have a closed circuit TV thing on our
exactly.
doorbell. This is kind of a newish thing,
Yeah,
and it's like, well, what does the body camera say? Well, there
yeah,
isn't, well, if there's no body camera saying, backing this up, I'm not going to, again, we, for hundreds of years, we did not have these things and we actually
yeah.
solved crimes,
The
we
clearance
did the
rates
right
are
thing.
higher.
Yes. And,
Yeah,
and also, I think, you have, you know, law enforcement, the numbers have dwindled quite a bit. And the person that you lower your standards to hire is your future detective.
sure.
Keep
Yeah.
that in mind, departments.
Mhm.
That it's like, okay, I'm going to slide this person through because they check these boxes, or yeah, we'll let them get through probation, or yeah, you know what, they're not the best cop, but they're okay, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah,
There's your
they're
future.
breathing and they have a heart rate.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, there's your future homicide detective.
Yeah.
So, you're raising your hands like, how come we can't solve any of these crimes? I don't know. It's a mystery. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's like it's
Yeah.
just it drives me nuts, but oh well. So what do you
There's
think the future
also,
Go ahead.
well, I was going to say with technology, it comes at a cost. So I've battled this at work. When I came on, like nobody knew what MBAC was. Nobody knew what SNP profiles were or how the genealogy stuff worked. But also our Metro Crime Lab or even our state Bureau of Investigation doesn't have the technology, any of that new technology. So we have to go to private labs to use it, but that means money. That
That
means we
costs
need
money, yeah.
thousands of dollars. We have zero budget. Like, right, we're fighting now to get one, but as of now, I have $0 in the budget to spend on outside forensic testing. And it's taken me a long time to educate the chain of command on what, because they always assumed like, oh, our lab can just do it. Well, no, they don't have MBAC. They don't.
What is
No.
MVAC?
So MBAC is a forensic vacuum. And it's a very simple concept actually. And it's just this contraption with a little brush and it shoots the solution out through the brush onto whatever you're vacuuming. And then it sucks everything out of that object into a container. But as the solution goes through the filter into the container, the filter captures all the skin cells and everything else
Ooh, okay.
that's being sucked up. So, like, it's really good for porous items like clothing,
Hmm.
where, because the traditional way of getting DNA off a shirt, say, is just taking basically a Q-tip and swabbing it
Yep,
and
you
hoping
swabs.
you
Yep.
grab some skin cells, right?
Right.
Well, with the MVAC, it's going to get everything that's in there. Now, that can create problems because you may get multiple DNA profiles that then have to be separated and
Sure.
identified and stuff like that. But still, it's worth a try.
So MVAC, and what was
Um,
the other thing that you talked about?
and so doing genetic genealogy
Yeah. Oh yeah.
is so the type of um, DNA profile that is developed to put into CODIS, the FBI's
Yeah.
database for DNA, is totally different type of DNA profile than what is used for this investigative genetic genealogy, which is like the new and up and coming thing solving a lot of cases.
Right.
Well, there's no publicly funded lab, I don't think, that has the technology to develop what's called a SNP profile. It's a SNP, which is short for single nucleopolymorphism, I think. So just call it SNP, but
Okay.
is about $8,000 um,
Ooh.
to develop that profile and then upload it into a public, genealogy database that will
Yeah.
cooperate with law enforcement. And then, it's more money if you're not trained, which I am. I went to training to do genealogy. But if you don't have a genealogist, then you're gonna have to pay somebody to put together the family tree of this unknown
Hmm.
offender, is usually what it is, to figure out who it is. And so most agencies don't have that money. They just don't have funding. So it's not that they don't want to solve it or can't. It's like, okay, well, how do we fund this?
Yeah.
So there's becoming more options for grants and nonprofits that provide funding, but it's just going to take some time. So,
Wow.
so many reasons why the technology is there, but
Right.
not always in cases.
So what's in your future? Where do you see yourself in the future
I'm
here?
not going anywhere. I love my job. I love the
Okay.
detective I work with. Now, if she retires in 2 years, like when she can, when she's eligible, then I'll see where we stand. Um, and whether I want to stay with this agency. I think as the years pass, like more agencies are going to have civilian investigator
I
jobs. So I think
agree.
there'll be more opportunities out there to explore. But right now, I'm perfectly happy where I'm at. Um, and of course, I've put a lot of time and effort into several of these cases, and I would like to get them to a point of resolution
Sure.
before leaving. So, and there's more behind those. I mean, we have like 37 or something. So it's like I could work till I die and they won't all be solved,
Yeah.
but at least
Well,
do
I
what I
mean,
can.
you can only do what you
And
can
I'd
do.
like to grow the nonprofit. Like I said, I'd love to have more teams around the country, but that's not my main focus right now. I think that's going to take a ton of time and energy, and
Right.
I'm not a business person. I don't really know what I'm doing. So we'll see.
Okay.
But
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I got some Facebook questions from my cops and
sure.
raiders group.
Okay.
Let me jump in there. I had it saved, and of course it went away. I love technology. Here we go. All right. All right. Miriam Hashim says, I am really looking forward to this, Patrick. My question is, does Jennifer consider when deciding whether a cold case is still solvable or not, example, time passes since death, reliability, witness memories, does she have any thoughts on the true crime enthusiasts who get together to solve cases? Does it help or hinder professional cold case investigators?
I think for the most part it helps. What does it hurt?
Right.
I, and it's just, yeah, the passage of time. So the passage of time is a double-edged sword, right? So passage of time, people die, people's memories can change. But what I love about the passage of time is people get divorced or they break up. So
Yeah.
a former wife of somebody is much more likely to talk to me now than when they were married to the suspect. I love ex-wives, love them.
Oh,
So
yeah.
again, there's always, like I try to, I am kind of an optimist. I'm like, there's good things about time passing and there's bad things too. But I mean, I don't think there's a whole hell of a lot that could harm a case, other than if somehow a civilian group gets the entire case file, which would be super rare, and leaks the holdback information.
Mhm.
But other than that, I mean, really, what is it harming? I mean, and I mean, I'm not saying like if you have no experience in investigations, you should go knocking on suspects' doors and stuff. Like you definitely,
Right.
like me and George always have a safety plan in place on the rare occasion we do that.
Right.
And you really should educate yourself on interview techniques and building rapport and stuff like that before jumping into something. But I don't think that there's much harm to come to a case. I wish like a podcast would go out there and do an investigation on some of my cases at work, but I can't direct someone to do that,
Ah.
but I would be thrilled. Because again, someone may tell a civilian, so to speak, something that they're not going to tell me as a law
True.
enforcement investigator, and I would love to know that. So I think there's a lot of advantages. I just think most agencies don't know what to do when someone wants to dive into a case and they just want to keep themselves shut off, like we're not sharing anything. And
Yep.
well, no, actually, civilians can bring a lot to the table. What's if a case is 30 years old? What's the problem?
Gotcha. Now,
Yeah.
Steph West asks, how long are old evidence materials held for before being disposed of, and how are these items stored and then handled? Temperature, bagging, etc.
At my agency, if it's an unsolved homicide or missing person, there's nothing gets destroyed. It's
Right.
kept forever until the case is solved. Even past then, it's held for a long period of time.
Yep.
We have a huge evidence warehouse. It's very tightly controlled. It's got different storage areas, like for biological stuff that needs to be frozen. They've got freezers. The rest of it that can be in open air is usually bagged or boxed, and then it's all very well organized on a million different shelves
Yep.
that go a long ways back into this warehouse. And evidence techs are ours. They're extremely detail oriented and like organized, really, really good about. I mean, I can go in there for like a 1978 case, and within 2 minutes, they know exactly where the
That's
evidence is
impressive.
to
Yeah.
look at. Yeah.
That
So
is
ours is
impressive.
like really, really well maintained. I can't speak for other agencies. I can only speak for my own, but I've been very impressed with our evidence handling.
Okay. Flea Nelson Smith asks, interesting. Is this new evidence that you're is it new evidence that earmarks an investigation, or is it a new way advances in techniques of looking at old evidence?
I think it's both.
Okay.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes you get you get a new tip or a new lead, right?
Right.
Um, I just got one the other day on us about us. We have a set of unidentified remains from 1986. And we literally just got a phone call the other day from somebody that gave us
Yeah.
a new direction to look in to compare the
Yeah.
DNA from those remains to this person. So
Wow.
sometimes it is just a phone call, but I think it is also an extremely thorough, full reinvestigation and got to stay open-minded. You cannot get tunnel
Yep.
vision on one person. And
Absolutely.
And when I look, we have some cases like this where there was a top suspect on the, in the former detective's eyes, and that was the main focus. And so one thing you can do is like, okay, well, that person's been pretty thoroughly vetted and nothing's linking them to this case. Let me set them aside. I'm not eliminating them as a suspect. Let me set them aside for now and see where else I can look. So I think it's really important, yeah, to keep an open mind and go back to everything.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Jennifer Eskew, she says, ask her if she wants to become a full-time instructor at FLETC. They are hiring, and she looks to be super qualified.
I appreciate the offer, but not right now because I really like what I'm doing here.
Well, okay. You don't want to
But
go
it
to
would be
Georgia?
fun. Maybe I could be like I come in twice a year to do a class on genealogy or something
You know what? I
specific that
bet
you
they
guys
would
need.
take you. That's
Or
something to
cold
think
cases.
about.
I have many presentations I've given on cold case investigations in general. So I would be more than happy to come down a couple times a year and
Well, it's
do
something
something like that. But
something to explore, I think.
yeah.
All right, Sandra Marine. First of all, what an incredible resume. I'm really excited for this. What's the most challenging aspect of an investigation for a cold case versus a current case?
Mhm. That's a hard question because each one's unique. So it's like
Sure.
each one has something that's most challenging, but in a different case, it's not the most challenging thing.
Well, I would say,
Um,
I would say, it's like you said before, people move, people die, people,
yeah,
whatever. You know, of course, you want when the trail is hot, that's, your solvability is higher.
yeah. Um, I think one big challenge is if your top suspect is dead.
Yeah, that would do it.
I've got a case like that right now from the 1980s. He passed away many years ago. I've struggled to find, I have found a couple of his family members. His offspring, I won't say if it's a he or she, was very uncooperative, so that was a dead end.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, One of his siblings did speak with me, but knew nothing about anything.
Mm,
So I'm like, because I really love if I can figure out what a suspect has told other people about the crime. And so I'm not totally at a dead end, but so far I've been at a dead end on finding information like that about this suspect.
okay.
And of course, he's not here for me to
Mm,
question
yeah,
um,
that
at
makes it
some
tough.
point. Yeah.
So
So
the end here, how does her counterintelligence and her medical examiner experience help with cold cases?
well, like I said, being able to be very patient and is was, like I said, taught to us day one in counterintelligence training because recruiting sources is a long process. And it can, take many, many years actually. And so it's the same with cold cases. Like you have to accept, like, definitely nothing's happening fast. But I can be methodical, I can be strategic, I can figure out, okay, what's the order in which I want to interview people. I do this all the time. I have a spreadsheet that I keep for each case. It's like a wish list of people I want to talk to, and my research on them, what they've said in the past, or if they've been interviewed, whatever. And then, but then I rank them like, okay, let's figure out this most strategic order to interview people in. So I think that plays out. Obviously the death investigation stuff. I mean, I'm having a intimate understanding of what happened to the victim, and if you can figure out like the order of injuries, if there's
Mm,
multiples, that can kind of tell you what was going on during the altercation and during the homicide. All those little clues, that I learned about attending all those death scenes and autopsies definitely are they're directly relevant to better understanding the crime.
okay. Well, let's wrap this up. I want you to be able to promote your books. There is no goat. I'm
Yes.
definitely have to check that out. What other books have you written?
George and I wrote a book called Silent Silhouette, and that's about the investigation that we did on the Deborah Sue Williamson case in Texas. There is a chapter I wrote in there about the Rebecca Gould case and some of the strategies we used in that one. We wrote the book, like, to give Debbie a voice and on a different media platform. Also, Debbie would be 65 now, so a lot of her friends and classmates and loved ones, are also in their 60s and they're not as hip or keen on social media.
Okay.
And a lot of them were like, yeah, you guys should write a book about our case, and so we started thinking, well, yeah, why not? Let's just
Sure.
use that media platform too. But it's also, if you are a civilian investigator not tied to law enforcement, you might pick it up because we tried to pass on some of our lessons learned and what's worked well for us so that it helps educate others. Unfortunately, the book doesn't have a proper ending right now because the suspect hasn't been arrested and convicted.
Right.
But there's a lot of suspect information in there, and we actually did have most of the early case file. Um, of course, there's holdback information that we're not going to reveal, but there is some information from the case file in that book that we felt like there's no reason to keep this secret. So
Yeah.
yeah, so and they're both books are on Amazon. You can get it in Kindle or paperback.
Okay. So Silent Silhouette and There Is No Goat.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where can people go to learn more about you and your books and all the work?
Well, you can visit our website, breakthecase.org. We have most of the content from each case we've worked. Each case has its own page on the website. So you can, in the drop down menu up above on homicide cases, pick Rebecca Gould and it'll take you to her page, which has a ton of content.
Okay.
Podcast links, articles I've written, YouTube videos, like all the different media is all in one place. So I think it's user friendly. That's what people say. They want to really study one of the cases we've worked on. It's
Yeah.
all in one
I
spot.
was on it. It's a good website. I did check that
Okay.
out. And
Appreciate that.
it is user friendly because I'm not the most techie kind
Okay.
of guy. And that worked
Yeah.
out really that worked
Yeah.
out really well, I think.
There's a contact page if you want to
Yep.
send us an email, or the email is info@breakthecase.org. And if you want to join our current investigation on Linda's case, the Facebook group is Unsolved Murder of Linda Malcolm. You can listen to the Break the Case podcast. Be careful because there's another Jennifer who stole my name.
Oh no.
I'm kind of in love with her about this. I'm really irritated that she took the same name and we're both named Jennifer. So I did, just so she knows, and I've told her, I did submit my trademark application this year. So it is going to become my name and she's going to have to do something different. But just know there's two Break the Cases out there right now. But ours has the file folder with you'll recognize the logo for
Okay.
ours. Each season is a different case, so we do a serial type podcast. Let's see what else. The Unsolved Murder of Rebecca Gould page is still there. Unsolved Murder of Deborah Sue Williamson page is still there. If you want to look back at those investigations,
Okay.
tons and tons of content in those groups,
Yeah.
and Break the Cases on all of them. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, so you can follow us
Okay.
there if you want.
Perfect. Well, Jen, this has been so much fun talking to you. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
your
same
time.
here. I really enjoyed it.